Essentially, if anyone's looking for a way to find, fund, list, market, launch your very first or next luxury short-term or mid-term rental, I'm your girl. I'm here and I am happy to help. We have over 400 people in our community who are participating in a variety of levels. Some have graduated and they're now in the membership where we're always optimizing because operations is key on the back end of things. And so I do have a free gift. If you grab that, we'll definitely plug you in and let you know how we can connect. If you go to 75gems.com, that's www.75gems.com. You'll grab a list of my top 75 cities with the highest profitability. And from there, you'll have access to all the other things inside of.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Physicians and Properties podcast. I'm so excited today to have Dr. 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻 on the podcast. Rachel, I'm a huge fan. So glad that you're here.
Dr. Alex, thank you so much. I cannot tell you how honored I am to be here with you today. Thank you for putting in the time, the energy. I know how much work goes into putting out a podcast. The education that you are providing to the community is just like nothing else. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. That means a lot, especially coming from you, a little under the weather and definitely a lot later there on the East Coast than it is in Colorado. So thanks for staying up late and hopping on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Awesome. Well, do you mind just kind of telling the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Rachel. I am a pharmacist by training. I actually retired from my W-2 a little bit earlier last year, and it was all due to real estate investing. So back in 2018, we were towards the tail end of paying off nearly $500,000 of student loans, and we invested in our very first real estate property. I was just drinking the Bigger Pockets podcast Kool-Aid and was slowly slipping off my Dave Ramsey hat and putting on the Bigger Pockets hat on. And just, we fell in love with the strategy. We looked at a variety of strategies out there, from wholesaling to fix and flipping to long-term rentals. And we landed on short-term rentals because the math was mathing. I looked at the numbers, Dr. Alex, and honestly, when you position a property as a short-term rental that's a little bit more distinct, that has some appeal to, the audience you're attracting, something that's a little bit more luxury in terms of, giving that elevated service and that elevated stay, you really have an opportunity to generate a significant amount of revenue. So we went all in on the luxury short-term rental side. Our very first property that we purchased was not anything close to seven figures. We don't purchase seven-figure properties just because they don't pencil out. But that's really where we started, and the rest is history.
That's awesome. Yeah, like I told you before we hopped on, I've heard you on multiple podcasts, and your story is just super inspiring, super relatable, and so cool how you went, from working, I'm sure way more than you should have in the pharmacy to then being able to kind of tailor that back and now retire, all because of short-term rental investing. It's so awesome.
Yeah. And you know what? My husband actually retired before I did. I'm an immigrant from Haiti, so I had like that nervousness about leaving my W-2. It's like, okay, then what am I if I'm not a doctor of pharmacy, that golden child with a degree and being an immigrant? It's like the pressure is even more elevated. But the burnout was, it was insurmountable for me at that point. And I determined, what, am I going to live my life based on someone else's dreams for myself, or am I going to create my own reality? And that's what really pushed me forward to continue to invest and to create a different for myself.
Well, you create it and you crush it. I think that that's something that a lot of folks kind of struggle with in the medical space, who are pretty burnt out and thinking about maybe transitioning to part-time or leaving medicine or leaving, pharmacy. Was that something that you struggled with, that like identity kind of shift from pharmacist to real estate investor? And how did you kind of cope with that?
Oh, I did deal with it massively. I remember actually mapping out what that year would look like, because my goal was to retire end of this year, actually. And so, or semi-retire rather. There's really no retirement for me. I'm that person who likes to get into things, but yeah, I really struggled with it. I waited nearly a year to tell my parents that I walked away from this six-figure degree where pharmacists are some of the most trusted professionals on planet Earth. And, they understand now, but at first it was like, oh my gosh, what will society say? And for me, myself, it's like, well, then who am I? So I really did struggle with it, but I went through a process of, I had to really evaluate myself and ask myself, well, what do you really want? What do you really want? And really map out my vivid vision and a 25-year goal. And my 25-year goal wasn't me, counting by fives at a retail counter, right? My 25-year goal was me on a luxury island providing financial literacy education to other burnt out moms that work at a pharmacy with 3 letters with 2 boys. Like, I was so specific because, like, where they get pampered and, they're able to rejuvenate themselves and go back to work and make an impact in the healthcare world, because we know that our healthcare system needs some healing too. And so that was my vision, and that would lead to, a healthier healthcare system having the ability to come together and to heal the nation's problems. We have orphanages that we're able to support in other countries. I put women through med school in Haiti.
Awesome.
So those are the things that light me up. And I got to tell you, when I was working full-time W-2, just paying those taxes and kind of making ends meet and, working multiple shifts. And for me, my vision was, I just want to pick up my kid from school on Thursdays. That was the goal then. But I really believe that because of real estate, it has evolved massively. I wouldn't be able to even think this big had it not been for me, creating this real estate portfolio.
That is awesome. Yeah, a couple of things there. Well, one, thank you on behalf of every primary care doc who messes up a prescription and the pharmacist saves us. So thank you for that, because the pharmacist has definitely saved me multiple times.
Thank you.
And also, Haiti, just going back there real quick, it's so cool what you're doing there and sending folks to med school and being able to pay for that, based off your business, which is amazing. My wife actually went to Haiti on a mission trip after the earthquake, and I haven't been able to go yet, but I would love to. And we have some family members who adopted their son from Haiti after the earthquake. His parents unfortunately passed away in the earthquake. And so anyway, so Haiti has a special place in the Schloe household. But my wife just said that they are just the most beautiful, like loving people, relationally so rich. So really cool. And really cool that you're able to touch that community back in Haiti as well.
Oh, thank you.
That's awesome. So take us back to when you're in the pharmacy, you started investing in real estate. What did that look like, kind of that transitionary period as you started to realize, hey, this is actually working? What was that like? What was that first deal like for you?
Oh, so like I said, the commute was, I want to say, an hour drive back and forth to the various pharmacies where I was working. So I was consuming the Bigger Pockets podcast back then. And, I heard a number of strategies that sounded like it could work. I dipped my toe into one strategy. I didn't go full in. I didn't go head first because I'm very risk averse. Pharmacists, we're like, we got to follow the recipe. We're very risk averse, And so I dipped my toe in. I was looking at wholesaling, and I quickly realized, because of this one transaction where my husband and I, we drove all the way to Alabama and the property was just not at all as advertised. I was like, okay, let's get out of here now. And of course, it was like a $17,000 property. We're talking about all our hopes and dreams. We're going to be wrapped up in this property. It's going to be doing all these things, not even close. We get there. The property appeared to be like held together with caulking, like on the side. Almost. The roof was like dipped in. It was like, oh my God, like it just needed to be razed to the ground. And so I had started to develop my investment thesis. And I think it's very important for everyone in the audience to develop your investment thesis, to understand what is in alignment with you, because you're going to hear a lot of strategy out there. And I get shiny object syndrome just like everyone else, right? But what's in alignment with you? And at that moment, I said to myself, you know what? I'm not going to be part of the We Buy Ugly Houses crowd. I'm going to be part of the We Buy Pretty Houses crowd. So that was the beginning of me creating my investment thesis, because I knew, number one, I'm not going to manage a team of contractors and do fix and flips. I was already working like a 9 to 5. My husband was already working 9 to 5. When we paint, no offense, but it doesn't even look right. So we're not handy, right? But Dr. Alex, there are people in your audience who are extremely handy, who come from families of contractors and builders and all of that. So for them, that might be a great fit, right? But for us, it was not a good fit for us. Our highest and best use for ourselves was to work that W-2, get these 3%, 4%, 5%, 10% down loans, and leverage our work history to get into that first property. So instead of $17,000, we bought a house for $290,000. We put like 5% down. There was a particular loan in our market, so it was about $10,000 down and some change. And that's where we started. We had some money saved up. We got a bonus check for something. For the next one, we use a little 401k money. Of course, we're not giving financial advice. Talk to your people, but that's what I did. I'm just telling what I did. and we got the ball rolling that way. So I really think it's important. Like, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Where do you see yourself 25 years from now? Come up with your investment thesis, because not all deals are created equal, and not our deals are a good fit for everyone. It may be a good fit for someone, but it might not be a good fit for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's awesome. I think a couple things that were important that you mentioned was shiny object syndrome, which we all have. And I think something that you did that is important is you thought, hey, maybe the wholesaling avenue is the way to go, but you pivoted into something else. And I think sometimes folks think they have to like pick one real estate investment strategy, stick with that forever, no matter what, and they can never invest in anything else. And then the other folks think like, hey, I can invest a little bit in everything. I think really the sweet spot's maybe sampling a couple different asset classes and then focusing on your one, passion that you really like, which for you guys is, the luxury short-term rental space. And so I think that that's really important for folks listening too, to hear like, hey, Rachel also thought about wholesaling for a bit and then realized, hey, this is the strategy that I want to go through, and it's not that. So I think that's helpful.
You're absolutely right. I've thought of storage facilities, syndications. I've looked at everything. As a matter of fact, I remember my real estate mentor, she primarily focuses on storage facilities. I remember she was going over a deal. I was like, oh, I'm interested in the deal. She goes, stay in your lane. You're the luxury short-term rental lady. I was like, you just don't want me to be great. But she was absolutely right, because I was honing my skills and still working on operationalizing my business then. And so now that we have that mapped out, we have ventured in the luxury midterm rental space. So we've specialized. We're in the luxury midterm rental space. We have a fund. So we have diversified a bit, but we've really honed in our skill in this particular asset class. And what that's done for us, it's helped us to outperform the competitors. Whereas if we were the same type of host as everyone else in the market, we would be seeing a down market, and we see 48%, revenue increase compared to our current market.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think about it kind of like, maybe med school or pharmacy school is that initial, like you're getting that exposure to everything, and then residency, you figure out, okay, I like short-term rentals. And then fellowship, like, hey, now I'm the expert and I'm branching out a little bit, is kind of a way to look at it for all our medical folks that are listening. That's awesome. Let's kind of hit on that, I guess, a little bit in terms of Airbnb. So Airbnb bust, everyone's saying that. I saw, your post where you're mentioning, hey, maybe in 24 folks are going to have to go back to their W-2s and out of the short-term rental space. So let's kind of sit there for a little bit, if you don't mind, and kind of talk about short-term rentals and what do you think really makes a good short-term rental, or maybe an example from one of your later properties here more recently, and how well they're performing and having over 40% increase in revenue in a market where we're seeing decreased average daily rates and so forth.
Yeah, I still believe in some of the old adages that we were taught. You make your money when you buy, right? So one of the biggest struggles that I have seen are those who over leverage and purchased at a higher price point than they should have, or took out particular funding stacks that are not really conducive for a long-term strategy. And the reason I know that is because they are in my DMs, they are in my community, coming to me looking for some support, and we're supporting them as best as we can, trying to help them liquidate as much as possible. And so that's one of the biggest things, is not knowing your numbers. You have to know your numbers. You have to run your numbers. Do not just invest because Dr. Rachel or Dr. Alex says, you know what? Oh, that's a good market. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. There are specific attributes that makes a property a good property, a viable property. And I know that now, like right here, right now, we're beginning of 24. The numbers have normalized in terms of the occupancy rates across the markets, and the revenue is still a little bit higher compared to past years. But when I talk about normalizations, the pandemic numbers or the numbers around there were highly inflated. You could take iPhone photos, which we were talking about a little earlier, and you could make a killing on the Airbnb platform. Well, everyone's standards are higher. And so, although thankfully we are still generating a significant amount of revenue, we're profitable, but it's taking a lot more effort for us to be where we are today. And it's taken the tenure, understanding the market, having the historical data. We use 2018, 2019 numbers to make projections on what we're going to buy, what we're not going to buy, and to build out that pro forma, because 2021 numbers are not the most accurate. So those are some of the things. So first of all, it's knowing your numbers and de-risking, looking at your capital stack to make sure you've de-risked. Number two, looking at your insurance policies and your coverages to make sure you're de-risked. When I had made that post on Dr. Alice, someone posted that someone had used some type of acid and it removed all of the lining in the bathtub. And it was such a horrible situation with a guest stay. But I'm I welcome that. I am coming for you. That is what the deposit is for. And that is what insurance is for. It's okay, that's a whole revenue stream for us. I dare you to trash my property. You just created a whole new revenue stream for me. And that is, I know that's contrarian, right? Because people are people are going to destroy your property. Please. Yeah. Please, I needed a new kitchen anyway. Let's go.
We'll put the link to your booking in the show notes there if anyone wants to trash your property.
There we go. My insurance company's gonna love this
exactly. Yeah, they're cringing a little bit. That's funny. What is thinking about that? What's kind of the craziest story that comes to mind of a bad guest experience in one of your properties or something along those lines?
Okay, so thank you for asking that. I haven't had that question asked in a while. And since my company is vertically integrated, so all the operations are taken care of by my team, I don't have too many interactions. But I do remember one where the guest had checked out and sent a message to my VA at the time. I just had one VA that was doing the communications, and she's in the Philippines. And he said, "Oh, I left my firearm in the space. Can you go ahead and mail it to me?" And she was getting an address and she was trying to figure out how to mail this firearm. And when she couldn't figure it out, "Oh, what? We do not sell firearms in the U.S." So that was kind of crazy. And the police had to come in and do their thing and take care of it.
Just dropping it in a little envelope, sending it out. Yes. Yeah. That's awesome. We had Airbnb in �𝐻𝐻𝐸, Georgia. We sold recently, but the cleaners one time found a pretty large bag of cocaine and also blood on the sheets, which is disgusting. But we used to always joke, we were like, that was the fastest the house got cleaned the entire time they were cleaning for us, the most thorough. But ultimately, I think they poured it down the toilet, I hope. But yeah, that was an interesting story for us.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I think one thing you hit on too that's important for folks to think about too as they're getting started is expectations. I've definitely seen a change in expectations over the last 3.5 years that we've been in the short-term rental space. Of there's just some folks that are going to stay with you that you're never going to meet their expectations. And so I think that customer interaction and really, if there's a potential problem that's going to happen, meeting them ahead of time. I mean, we had just last week, our hot water heater went out, and this property is up in the mountains and in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, really rural, hard to get stuff there. And we ended up having to send the folks out there 4 times for this hot water heater for multiple different reasons. I don't know why it took 4 trips to get a hot water heater working, but we were just really forthcoming with the guests. Right before they checked in, we're like, "Hey, the hot water heater is not working. We're doing everything we can. It should be fixed tomorrow. But we're more than happy to refund your stay if you'd like." And luckily they were really cool with it and it ended up working out just fine. But I think it's just really important to kind of meet those expectations at ahead from the hosting perspective.
Absolutely. And you're completely right. We actually have some automations inside of our communication platform where like day two, the day after they check in, that is our expectations message. It's like, hey, I'm so glad you're in our space, something along the lines of, I hope you've
Yeah.
settled in. Our cleaners are great, but they may forget the occasional towel or something. Just let us know if there's
Yeah.
anything missing so that we can take care of you. And that's an
Yeah.
automated message. And we have like 6 automated messages that go out. And the rest of our messages are custom based on questions that we receive. But that alone, Dr. Alex, I think has saved us so much heartache and drama because that's their opportunity to just let you know about yourself and tell you everything that is wrong with the space. And so once in a while, you'll get that person who's like, well, this was missing or that was that, and it's not clean enough. And so you get an opportunity to remediate that right away because mistakes
Yeah.
happen, right? So it's not if, but it's
Yeah.
when. And like you said, if you set your expectations, like I'm going to lean into this because this is after all a hospitality business, not real estate. It is hospitality. If you can put some of those things in place, you will save yourself a lot of bad reviews and drama at the end.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that tip will save folks thousands of dollars for sure. I mean, we need it. We have a similar message, but maybe we should tinker it a little bit to sound a little bit better like that. Because yeah, it's hard, and you really are as a host. You're kind of sometimes at the mercy of the guest because you need that 5-star review. Not getting a 5-star review
Right?
leads to decreased revenue, and so it's definitely a balance. I think in terms of exceeding expectations and also being realistic at the same time with guests and yeah, hospitality, that's for sure. Awesome. Awesome. Well, so if you don't mind, kind of describe what are you guys looking for in a short-term rental now? You kind of hit on a little bit more luxury short-term rental. I know your rentals really kind of are top tier in terms of accommodations and design and everything else. So what do you think really makes a short-term gem?
I love the question. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that these are
Mhm.
$1 million properties. So that is not the case at all. As a matter of fact, when we were starting, our budget was up to 300,000, no more than 300,000. We were able to find several properties in like the 170, 290s, and we stayed there for a minute and then we crept up eventually. Now our budget is up to 750,000, although our purchase price up until this point has been 462K. In our personal portfolio, we have a fund. We go a little bit higher in the fund, but we're not looking to exceed the 750K because it just doesn't pencil out. And at that price point, I'm looking for a price to rent ratio of 20%. So the rental potential has to be there for me to make it make sense at that investment level. And so just want to dispel the misconception that I'm buying these $1 million properties. They're luxury because the beauty of this strategy is you can take a B property and turn it into an A experience because the luxury traveler, especially modern luxury after the Industrial Revolution, it was all about previously the accumulation of things. How do we transport things? But now it's not at all. It's all about the accumulation of experiences. So your guests don't want stuff. They want to be able to connect with those that they're traveling with. They want to connect with nature. They want to connect with the local area. So how do they get to live like a local? That's the beauty of not having like a chain hotel where everything looks the same across the board. You actually can provide a unique experience. And it is this extra special touches. This is what they say in our reviews every time. Dr. Rachel's extra special touches. And so from the local honey sticks to a local dry goods recipe that they can put into a crock pot to have a taste or a flavor of what that market has to offer. So those are things that don't have to break the bank, right? Which I absolutely love. And so I call it my 3 C's of luxury. It's connection, communication. So how you communicate with your guests, like I just mentioned, that I hope you're settled in, let us know. That's part of it. And I want to add, this modern luxury traveler is not just looking for, the destination, it's that journey, right, to the destination and beyond. So what are the things that you're sharing with the guests along the way? Do you understand the purpose of their visit? Is it a wedding? Is it a funeral? And are you communicating with them in alignment with the purpose of their journey to your space. So think about that. And then convenience. Third C is convenience. There's nothing more daunting than you arriving to a property, you paid a pretty penny to get there, and then you're like, oh my gosh, how do I get into the door?
Yeah.
The first thought is like, it's a scam,
Right.
So that's a
Yeah.
bad precedent, and we know that first impressions matter. So as they're entering the door, I love to have a keyless door entry. It's usually the last 4 digits of their phone number. They can go in. They're not fumbling for keys. It's not the middle of the night. It's not a hot mess. They're in. And then once they step into the space, it's all about the 5 senses for me. What are they hearing? What are they smelling? What are they seeing? What can they taste with snacks? What can they touch? And so without bullying the audience to death, but natural fiber
Yeah.
linens, I want them, everything that touches their skin to be really nice and soft and plush. So those are some of the things that you can add to your space to make it a luxury experience, again, without breaking the bank. And I think that's also very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, you hit on just a lot of gold there. That's awesome. Yeah, I think thanks for clarifying that too, because I do think folks hear luxury and they immediately think like multi-million-dollar house on the beach or in the mountains. What are some examples of like things you look for in a market? Like if someone's looking to get started, are they, what are your thoughts on being in a city and regulations versus like a smaller, more rural, maybe tertiary market or something along those lines? Where do you kind of see success going forward in the short-term rental space?
I love that question. And so we have 2 markets that we cater to for the most part. So one is the destination market where, are the vacation rentals. And then we have the suburban market. And in our suburban markets, we primarily focus on leveraging the midterm rental strategy for displaced homeowners. And so if, for instance, you experience a fire or a flood, a water pipe that bursts, or a fallen tree, you get to stay in one of our properties. And all of our properties are 4+ bedrooms for sure. And when I coined the word luxury, and I should have mentioned this a little bit earlier, Dr. Alex, I coined the word luxury because of the revenue potential. So it's not a luxury property from a purchase price potential. That would be luxury real estate. So if you're a realtor, don't come for me. This is not what I'm talking about. But from a revenue opportunity, so economy would be less than 150 a night potentially. Then you have upscale or maybe mid-grade, then upscale, then luxury, then ultra luxury. So we live in the luxury and ultra luxury because our nightly rates are $500 to $2,000 a night, which is a lot, right? But our avatar, multi-generational, multi-families, traveling with children and pets. So if me and my husband are traveling, his adult siblings and their spouses and their children and grandpa on both sides are traveling, you talk about 8 paying adult units that can split that $1,500 a night and stay there for a week. And it outperforms their experience in a hotel. They get probably 2 living rooms, gaming, and a great backyard with putt-putt and cornhole and hot tub and swimming pool. Some of our properties have a pool, not all. But we like the hot tub in the mountain regions. We like the barrel saunas and just make it really cute. Again, these are $300 properties that we're really doing them up in a special kind of way. And so we're always looking for like the non-negotiable for me is the bedroom count. Always looking for that bedroom count because my avatar demands that bedroom count, like a larger bedroom count. So 5 to 8 bedrooms is our sweet spot. So in the suburban markets, we have done the same thing because we have been able to host and house larger families who are displaced or smaller families who are coming from large homes who are displaced due to either a natural or an accidental disaster. And those are corporate contracts where the insurance companies pay us directly, not the guests. Okay. So we're seeing just a massive amount of revenue because we're getting short-term rental payouts. And these are long-term stays because if it's a water damage, it's going to be a 6-month stay. If it's fire damage, it's going to be a 9 to 13-month stay.
Wow. That's awesome. And that's a great way to, one, like dramatically increase your revenue. Also from the aspect of you're not having as many turns and as many cleans and as probably as much damage to the property. And we talked about deposits earlier, so you're definitely,
Yeah.
taking care of it from that perspective. That's really cool. Do you reach out to insurance companies directly, or is that still kind of booked through a short-term rental platform typically for insurance stays like that?
So that's a great question. And because the insurance companies, unlike some of us, they know how to stay in their lane, right? They don't necessarily handle the housing side of it. They actually outsource it to a third party. And that third party is the one who's in communication with me. I've got them on speed dial on my phone. As long as you get with that one contact, you
Yeah.
continue to, rely on them. But we've been doing it since 2018. So our Rolodex is quite
Yeah.
large of all of the temporary housing agencies in North
That's
America
awesome.
that we could lean on. And what I've loved about the relationship that we fostered with them is whenever they ask if I have something available, I always say yes, because I do have a
Yeah.
network of members in our community who have properties. They're like, you have something in Missouri or Tennessee? Obviously, I don't, but yes, of course. And it's like 911 who has something, because I want to be the person who's always saying yes. And that's how we stay booked year round with these insurance claims contracts in our suburban market.
That's really cool. Yeah, we house hack our basement here in Colorado Springs, and yeah, house hacking is the best. I mean, I think everybody could and could in some capacity, and we've really enjoyed the midterm renters, and we like short term renting it out as well. And midterm wise, we make a little bit less money, but it's really fun for us to like get to connect with a guest. And like we just recently had a great guest who stayed with us, who was retiring from the military and waiting for his place to be finished up. And so he was with us for almost 2 months, and we got to like meet his son and like really get to know him. And it was really cool from a relational perspective. But I also have found, and interested to kind of hear your take on this, I've also found that in between midterm stays, it's like Airbnb is angry at us for doing midterm stays because they're not getting as much of like probably a percentage fee from those multiple bookings that weren't going booked during those 2 months. So I was wondering if you guys have experienced that, or if it's really just more strictly split off properties, only do short-term rentals and only do midterm rentals for you in regards to that, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. And there is a lot of controversy around it. So my revenue manager hates that we do this, but I'm going to do it because, again, it's in alignment with my lifestyle. Imagine you have someone book your property for 11 months. Your mortgage is, and this is my member, Sophia, your mortgage is $1,500 a month. The insurance is paying you $7,600 a month.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out. I'm going out of the country for a few months. She's a really exhausted attorney. And so these are the situations. And so revenue management, be darned, he hates it because it does impact his ability to really drive up the revenue and I would say rank on Airbnb, because Airbnb is an SEO in it and of itself. So yeah, you're not going to be optimized. And many people say, well, I'm going to lose my super host. I have many members who are still super hosts and who have become super hosts leveraging this strategy, as long as you're squeezing in some of those stays in between. So yes, you can potentially lose your ranking on Airbnb, and it can make it a little bit more difficult for you to get those 2-night stay bookings. And I get that question all the time, Alex, but I'm like, so what? Do you want money? Do you want freedom? Or do you want Airbnb's approval? We're going to have to get over that a little bit, because if that is in alignment with your lifestyle, I had another member who had a family member who's going through a massive medical situation, and it allowed her the breathing room to take care of the family member, know that that revenue is coming in because he was the income earner. He was the breadwinner in the family. Well, that revenue covered his income, and she could, get that breathing room. So trust me, she was not worried about Airbnb's ranking. But you're absolutely right. Yes, it does impact it negatively, but you have to ask yourself, does that matter as much to me as whatever else I have going on? And for some people, the ranking does matter more. So then you have to reposition your listing to address that.
That's a great answer. Yeah. And for us, I mean, we like the midterm renters a little bit more here because it's our personal residence, and we don't have to worry about the cleaner coming in and out, new people all the time. And so, we've found it typically takes like a week or two in between midterm stays to get another one. And we're like, okay, we'd rather eat those 2 weeks, and then get a midterm rental in who's then occupying the house for a couple months. So it makes it up for the, typical orphan nights that might be missed or not booked in the future if we were just doing strictly really short-term rentals. So yeah, really interested and grateful for your thoughts in regards to that.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And so you can even future pace yourself and say, okay, I have these guests that are coming in midterm, and it seems like they're coming in from Rhode Island for whatever reason, right? So when it's time for that midterm guest that stay to come to an end, put out something on the Rhode Island neighborhood Facebook group, join them so that you can put the word out that you have a midterm available for those who are traveling to the area. You never know, right? I mean, I love identifying where are people coming from. My husband, he's the head of operations. So I asked him the words. I wonder where they come from. Do they have friends? He was like, well, you ask them. I was like, yeah, we have to ask everyone where they come from. Do they have friends? They're like, we're here to work with the plant. I'm like, which plants? And can I talk to the plant people? Because you almost have to be a little curious because just like they need accommodations, you know what? They may have coworkers and colleagues that need accommodations as well midterm. And so that's a little bit of an extra step that we take by collecting emails, just to kind of keep that conversation going. And that goes a long way.
Yeah, the email list is gold, as Amy Porterfield often says. Got to bring her up in this. But yeah, she's awesome. And you're awesome too.
Shout out to Amy for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's really cool. I think a lot of times folks who are getting started think, if I'm going to do a midterm rental, I have to do it to a traveling nurse. I feel like that is what is thought, and we've probably had maybe 2 traveling nurses, and then everyone else has been some sort of traveling professional in some variety. Yeah, some folks working at like different industrial plants and so forth is a great way to look at it. So I think reaching out to not just focus just on Furnish Finder and reaching out to some of these other larger companies that maybe have locums tenens workers and so forth can be really helpful.
Yeah. And you know what, Dr. Alex, travel nurses are the mythical creatures that all the short-term rental hosts want to serve until they really hear their budget. And so if your property and your monthly mortgage, say, is $2,000, well, the travel nurse is looking for something around the $600 mark. And so you're not even going to make your monthly mortgage on those days. So yes, branch out. There's over 50 different midterm rental avatars that you can serve. You mentioned the gentleman who is retired from the military. So there's military. If you're near a military base, leverage that. There's the airline industry. We have crash pads in our community where, the stewardess and the captains and, a variety of employees, they need to stay in town for a period of time. Whether or not they're going to fly, they don't know, but they need to crash somewhere. So there's an airline industry. There's higher education, locum tenens, like you mentioned a little bit earlier. Right now we're going through a political campaign. There's political campaign staff, government officials. There's so many climate migrants, those that are snowbirds. There are over 50 midterm rental avatars. And of course, what you're doing with residential, that is, a different midterm rental avatar, essentially probably long-term rental, I would imagine.
Yeah. Residential assisted living. Yeah. Typically about 18 months to 2 years or so, depending. And I love residential assisted living. I could talk about that all day. I think it's a great way, and you can kind of capture, regular residential assisted living. And then if you have a memory care home, they can transition to that memory care home. And there's a lot of ways to keep those homes filled up that way. And I think it's a great asset class, but I don't want to give you shiny object syndrome at all. So awesome. Yeah, so cool. Well, I know you have a community and a platform with short-term gyms. I'd love for if you're willing to kind of share a little bit about that and how folks could get involved with it if they're interested.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have what I call a concierge coaching program. Essentially, if anyone's looking for a way to find, fund, list, market, launch your very first or next luxury short-term or midterm rental, I'm your girl. I'm here and I am happy to help. We have over 400 people in our community who are participating in a variety of levels. Some have graduated and they're now in the membership where we're always optimizing because operations is key on the back end of things. And so I do have a free gift. If you grab that, we'll definitely plug you in. I'll let you know how we can connect. If you go to 75gems.com, that's www.75gems.com. You'll grab a list of my top 75 cities with the highest profitability. And from there, you'll have access to all the other things inside of
That's
community.
awesome. I'm signing up once this is done, and we'll put a link in the show notes as well for it, of course. Dr. Gainsbrugh, I'd be remiss real quick if I didn't ask about Netflix and what that experience was like for you.
Okay, so that was really interesting. We had a property that we had launched as a midterm rental just to stand it up and get the right cleaners in the space to make sure that the property was good to go before we launched it fully as a short-term rental. And so when I turned on the dynamic pricing tool for that 30-night stay, I was expecting, like a high $8,000 per month or something really juicy like that, maybe $9,000 per month. And the dynamic pricing tool priced it at $28,000 for that 30-day. And I was like, okay, something's wrong. This is completely off. The AI is completely off. Let me turn it off so that I can retrain it because it's supposed to be at $8,000 or $9,000. Dare I think $10,000. And it got booked at $28,000. And then the next month it got booked at $22,000. Yeah. And this is a property. The mortgage is $2,500 a month.
That's amazing.
And so we were floored. AirDNA caught wind of it. Netflix caught wind of it. And that's how we ended up on the TV show Buy My House, where I was able to get a nice cash offer, double the purchase price 1 year from purchasing the property on international TV, which is a hoot. Awesome. I have no show business background. And now we're being casted for 2 more TV shows. Cool. So it's like, oh my gosh.
Oh, wow. Well, you're a star. I'm honored to have you on here. That's awesome. It's called Buy My House.
Hardly, my friend. Yeah,
awesome. Awesome. I got to reinstate my Netflix membership to check that out. That's so cool. That's really neat. Yeah, I had to ask about that. I didn't know the story behind it. I just knew that you were on Netflix there. That's cool. What?
But you know what? I know we're coming to the telling, but here's the moral of that story for me. Because can you imagine that though? And so that night, I thought to myself, I don't know if it was my money trauma that was holding me at $8,000. I did have a property that was smaller, generating $6,000, so I went to $8,000. I don't know if it was being a little girl from Haiti myself, all of the self-limiting beliefs that made me almost train this AI to price me down to $8,000. And so that night I didn't sleep, and I asked myself, where else am I playing small in my life? And so for me, that was the aha moment, and I think that was a paradigm shift that changed the trajectory of how I look at investing and how we're seeing these massive opportunities when we're dealing with institutions versus individuals. And so, because I couldn't imagine for myself someone paying $10,000. Well, it was an institution that paid the $28,000. It was the insurance company. It was, the movie industry. It was different. So yeah, and I just want to leave your audience with that. Where else are we playing small, right? Especially as healthcare professionals. We've done all of the school. We don't need more schooling. We just probably need to just go for it. Take some action.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. That's a perfect way to wrap things up, and a great question for everyone to stew on. Is 75gyms.com best place for folks to reach out to? Or are there some other places that folks want to get a hold of you they can reach out to?
Yeah, so I have some free 30-second video trainings on Instagram, some reels. If you go to short.term.gym on Instagram, you'll find me there as well.
Awesome. So great. Well, Dr. Rachel Gainsbrugh, thanks so much for coming on the show tonight. Really appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Dr.
Awesome.
Alex.
With that, it's been Dr. Rachel Gainsbrugh, Dr. Alex Schloe with another episode of Physicians and Property, signing off. Awesome. Thank you so much. That was so much fun.